Well, we asked the Premier for an interview on this. He's out of the country on business, but former Premier and current official opposition leader Rachel Notley is here to discuss this controversial move. Tell us what happened this afternoon. I guess you got a little ushering out of the legislature for, I don't know, noisy behavior?
Well, I wasn't particularly noisy, but it is true that I challenged the fact that the House leader was misleading the House by suggesting that this bill that was introduced yesterday doesn't fire the Elections Commissioner, which is ridiculous. It does fire the Elections Commissioner. Jason Kenney is going down in history as the most undemocratic Premier in the province of Alberta and potentially in the country. Never before have you seen this kind of abuse of power where an officer of the legislature is in the middle of an investigation into the governing party and they get fired. Could you imagine if Justin Trudeau had fired the ethics commissioner in the middle of the SNC investigation? This is what this is akin to, but somehow Jason Kenney thinks he's above the law.
I got to admit that would be quite a scandal here in Ottawa if that happened. But I guess the one thing I want to find out why do you not feel it's okay? Well, not okay. Do you feel it's acceptable that the chief electoral officer, he's going to pick up the investigation and complete it? Isn't that acceptable?
Absolutely not. First of all, we don't know that he will. It's to his discretion. And secondly, one person has been in charge of the investigation all this time. They have the information. They know what they're doing. They've been fired. This is incredibly threatening, harassing, bullying behavior. It creates a massive chilling effect on anybody who would roll up their sleeves and do their job with integrity and speak truth to power. Frankly, anybody involved in this investigation, whether it's the RCMP or the Crown Prosecutor or anybody, needs to be worried about whether Jason Kenney's coming after their job. So no, the fact that the Chief Electoral Officer may do it, who by the way is going to be looking to be reappointed by this government or the majority of government members 4 months from now, that's not an answer, not at all.
Yeah, now you know he's got a majority mandate. I'm wondering, is there a way to stop it from the opposition's viewpoint?
Well, as you may know, I wrote to the Lieutenant Governor today to ask her to at least consider taking the very unorthodox and very rare step of refusing to sign the bill and give her assent to the bill should it pass. We are also seeking legal advice to see how we can challenge it in the courts. Of course, we'll do everything we can to stop it in the legislature, although it's been paired with another historic first in that even before the bill was tabled, the government introduced a motion for closure so that it will max out at only 3 hours of debate. And to be clear, there's something like 16 bills that are impacted in this omnibus piece of legislation. This is not the only matter inside it. They're also taking over joint governance of public pension plans and getting rid of that at the same time.
I'm curious, you're going to talk to the Lieutenant Governor there. I almost wonder if that's going to trigger a bigger problem because you're almost dragging a constitutional crisis into this, aren't you?
Well, to be clear, it's not me that dragged the constitutional crisis in. It's our Constitution, which sets out very clearly the need to maintain a distinction between the legislative, executive, and judicial arms of government. And what is happening here is a breach of that, and it is frustrating the ability of the Parliament, in this case the legislature, to do its job. So there is a constitutional crisis embedded in this bill. It is one of Jason Kenney's own making as a result of his own hubris and his own arrogance and his desire to cover up for UCP operatives.
One point to help our viewers understand what's going on. I mean, does Alberta, in your view, need both an election commissioner and a chief electoral officer? It seems like a bit of bureaucratic duplication, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily. In fact, there's a different skill set that is required by a commissioner as opposed to the chief electoral officer. Chief electoral officer is asked to work together with all the parties to make sure that they follow the laws. But sometimes, if the parties then choose to intentionally participate in things that are illegal, there's almost a conflict there if the person who is a facilitator suddenly has to turn into the investigator. And so so there's strong reasons for there to be a separation. There has been in Ottawa in the past. Indeed, Stephen Harper separated the two at one point. But in either way, this fellow, Lauren Gibson, has been managing the investigation for over a year now. He has already imposed over $200,000 worth of fines, again, unprecedented in this province, found at least 16 people to have breached our elections laws, and the investigation's not over. So any suggestion that this is somehow a reasonable cost-cutting measure is ludicrous. This is a clear abuse of power. It is an attempt to interfere with the administration of justice, and it is unprecedented in Canadian politics.
All right. I can't let you go without asking what you are expecting tomorrow in the cabinet shuffle. I mean, is there a way, in your view, for Alberta to be heard when it didn't elect any Liberals?
I mean, I think it's obviously that it's going to be a challenge for obvious reasons. I hope that whoever ascends into senior positions, are able to demonstrate in whatever way that they have a strong understanding of what Alberta needs and what Albertans need. And I hope that the government is prepared to come to the table to demonstrate that they've learned from the election results and to commit to Albertans that they are prepared to do more things to support Albertans getting back to work. I also wish our Premier would actually focus on getting Albertans back to work as well, because that seems to be something he's kind of lost sight of. But that's absolutely what we need to see from the federal government as well.
All right, we'll see what happens tomorrow. And that was quite a story today in the Alberta legislature. Rachel Notley, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you.